We just got an amazing Nintendo Direct, but there's one huge glaring issue, and I'm not going to string you along throughout the entire video to find out. That issue is the price of the Switch 2. And at this point, some people have already probably left a dislike, a silly comment, and for those people, there's nothing I could do. I've come to accept that that is just YouTube. But for those of you who stay and stick around for the video, you may have a better understanding of where I'm truly coming from and why I feel that this price is such an issue. But let's begin with the Direct itself. I thought it was great. I think the Switch 2 is making some pretty decent innovations. They announced the power of the system and some pretty great looking games as well. Let's talk very quickly about the updates to the system itself. Apart from all the changes that we already knew about, like the USB-C and the magnetic Joy-Cons, we now know what the C button is actually used for. It's for a group chat feature. It seems to work pretty well, and it looks like it's nicely integrated to the system. The Switch 2 also has a mic that is supposed to blur out all background noise and focus on your voice, which seems a little unrealistic, to be honest, but we won't really know until we actually have our hands on the system and are able to test it, but it seems like a long shot. We also got the official announcements of the Joy-Cons being essentially used as mouses, which I think is a cool gimmick, but I do see some issues with it. For example, how the hell am I supposed to use this on a couch? It seems like a whole headache. I think it's going to work well on a desktop or maybe on a table, but if you're playing on the couch with multiple people, how the hell am I supposed to use that? This doesn't seem like a very well integrated gimmick like some other ones that we've gotten on Nintendo consoles before, but again, this is something that we don't really know how it's going to be used or how it feels to play until we actually have the system. We also got info on the power of the system. The Switch 2 screen will be able to output 1080p and 4K docked, and it's apparently also going to be able to take advantage of HDR. The system is also able to output 120 FPS. Keep in mind that HDR, the FPS, the resolution is all dependent on what game takes advantage of these. Nintendo's verbiage was for games that support those systems. So games that support 120 FPS, support HDR, support 4K. So Nintendo is putting it on the developers to add those to their games, which I do think is a good choice. I think they understand that the Switch 2 can be kind of annoying for some developers to have to develop for, so giving them the option to make their games 4K or 2K or run at certain FPSs is overall really good for the developers. And what I mean by annoying is that the Switch 2 is obviously weaker than the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, so if Nintendo wants even a slither of games that come out on those consoles, they should focus on giving the developers as many options as they possibly can. Onto the games. Nintendo really knocked it out of the park with this one. Arguably, the most important thing to get right is the games, and I'm glad to see that Nintendo delivered in that aspect. I'll go ahead and say that my favorite part of the Direct was the announcement of the FromSoft game. That is very exciting, and I think it's a great step in the right direction. I think Nintendo understands what position they are in. A lot of developers are not going to bring their PS5 games to the Switch, so they're opting for, let's hire these developers to make Switch exclusive games. That's a great option. Honestly, they know they're not getting Night Rain, so just hire FromSoft to make a Switch exclusive game. Very, very well done. I want to see more of this. I think a great option would be somebody like Capcom making a Resident Evil game that is a Switch exclusive. We've done it in the past. Continue doing this and separate yourself from just your first party exclusive. This is a great option, a great opportunity for Nintendo, and I think you guys should continue doing that. Aside from that, we got a new Mario Kart, a new Donkey Kong, a new Kirby racing game, and a ton of other games announced as well. I cannot possibly say them all now, so if you want to know, you should probably go watch the direct yourself, because there really is that many games announced for the Switch 2 so far. Also, very quick, I want to add this on now. They did reveal that there will be Switch 2 upgrades for certain Switch games, and they are going to be charged, so you will have to pay for these upgrades. They didn't announce how much those upgrades will cost, but my assumption is going to be around $10. I'm going to guess that Switch games are going to hop to the $70 mark. So if you bought a Switch 1 game for $60, it makes sense. You pay the $10, hit that 70 mark, and there you go. Editing Jobin here. I lied. The games are $80. It's worse than we thought. They're $80. So ignore what I just said. And we also got the GameCube Virtual Console announced, which, I mean, we've all been waiting for it. It makes sense why it never came to the Switch 1, because they've been sandbagging it for the Switch 2. Whatever. Okay, I think that's all the major announcements that are really important to understand when we begin talking about the price of the Switch 2. We are looking at $450 for the console and $500 for the bundle with Mario Kart. And this, in my opinion, is just way too much. It's way too much. And I know that some of you may be commenting that, well, the OLED was $350. This is only $100 more. And to that, I would say the OLED was expensive too. That the $350 was a lot for a Switch, even for the OLED. And the proof is out there. The Switch OLED never sold better than the original Switch. People obviously chose to continue to get the regular Switch, even though the OLED was an option. Many people opted out of getting an OLED because it was $350. And now some people want to tell me that it's only $100 more than the OLED. No, that's not how that works. My main issue is that this price is ridiculous for a children's console. I don't think anybody wants to spend $500 for their kids to play on a Switch. Not in this economy and not in the world that we live in right now. The Switch 1 was an affordable option for families that wanted to give their kids, the option to play Fortnite and Minecraft without dropping $500 for a PlayStation 5. And now you want to tell me that you're going to price the Switch 2 the same as a PS5, even though it can't graphically keep up with the PS5. It probably can't drop as many games as the PS5. It just doesn't make sense. Tell me, in what world does it make sense for a family that currently only have Switches upgrade to the Switch 2 instead of a PS5 if they had $500 to spare? I can't think of that world. I don't see it. And unfortunately, this isn't the first time that Nintendo has made a mistake with their launch price. The 3DS had the exact same issue. It was overpriced. It's just a reality of it. The Switch 2 currently is overpriced. Despite whether you, the viewer, can afford the Switch 2 at a $450, $500 price range, you have to consider a majority of the other people who bought the Switch were families, were children, and asking to put their original Switch away and dropping $500 for a marginal upgrade, I don't see it happening. Don't get me wrong, there is a lot coming to the Switch 2. There's a lot of good things going for it. 4K voice chat and a mouse gimmick is not enough to convince your average Joe to drop $500 on this thing. If I showed my parents footage of Mario Kart 8 and then the new Mario Kart, I guarantee they would not know the difference. They would have no idea that they were different games. And if you are watching this video and you have gotten to this point, then you are not the average person. You are a gamer, likely, and it's like your main hobby. So you can probably tell the difference. But I promise you, other people that don't live and breathe gaming cannot tell the difference. I promise. Obviously, the Switch 2 had to be more than the OLED, and right now it's only $100 more than the OLED. But optically, it does not look good. I think $400 would have been the sweet spot. Now that you're at $450, a lot of people are going to look at that price and just round up and say, that's $500. Where if you stuck to $400, I think people would have happily spent $450 or even more on the Switch 2. And that's not even considering the other charges that come with the system, the subscription fee, the camera, a Pro controller. And I know some of you may be saying that you don't need to buy those things, but I would argue that the subscription fee and the camera are some very integral parts to what the Switch 2 is bringing to the table. But I would argue that you almost need those things to get the full Switch 2 experience. If you saw the Direct, you know they emphasized the camera, they emphasized the group chat, and you need the subscription and to buy the camera to enjoy those things. My early predictions is that the Switch 2 is not going to sell as well as the Switch 1. It's just a tad too pricey, $50 too pricey to be exact. And to add even more salt to the wound, we have a scalper problem in 2025. Yeah, in the big 2025, there are still so many scalpers, and specifically for Nintendo products lately and Pokemon cards, scalpers have really come out full force this year. So I'm gonna assume that scalpers are gonna go ham on the Switch 2 release, which if you are checking when pre-orders start, I think I saw they come out next week. So you have about a week to prepare. And so keep your finger on the refresh button because scalpers are there and they're ready to pull that trigger. I promise you, they are going to try to buy the crap out of the system. And if you're sure that you want to buy a Switch 2, you gotta be on top of it, honestly. Will I be buying a Switch 2? The answer is yes. I want to do an unboxing, a review, maybe stream some games, but I understand that I am in a privileged position where I can't afford one, and it's not going to make me ignore the fact that it's just going to be too expensive for some people. I would even go as far as to say that for some people, they should not upgrade and stick with their original Switch. I don't think it's that big of an upgrade for them, and they should save their money. That's just the reality of it. We didn't even touch on the fact that a Steam Deck exists for cheaper than what the Switch 2 is. We didn't even touch that argument. But I don't know, guys. You let me know. What do you think? How are we feeling about this whole thing? These are just my initial thoughts. It just feels like the Switch 2 is too expensive. But let me know in the comments down below. And if you've gone this far, I really appreciate it. And please let me know how you guys are feeling and if you will be getting a Switch 2. Thank you, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.